Welcome to a festive edition of the Tuck Shop, it being Advent and Christmas being a shockingly short time away. For this festive edition, we are joined by a wonderful panel. Two people who've been on the podcast, and Catherine, who you won't know, but we'll come to in a second. Shahad, before we get stuck into anything tech related, do you want to just explain to the audience, if they haven't listened to your podcast, who you are, and choose something from our festive Tuck Shop? No sweets, no crisps, but lots of calories and sugar on show.
I'm definitely going to go for the Julian, and that comes first before I say who I am. I'm Shahad Choudhury. I'm the innovation lead for Openbrix.
Yep.
We are essentially the decentralized property portal for the UK.
I like how you say essentially and like it's obvious. We might come to that, but fair enough. Openbrix. Lisa?
I'm Lisa Targett. I'm the general manager of Tribe, and we're an influencer marketplace. We're a self-serve tech platform that connects brands with everyday people that want to celebrate any of your beautiful offerings here at the Tuck Shop on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever.
And you were saying that in Australia you only had healthy options at your Tuck Shops.
Yeah, we didn't only have healthy options. Had a lot of icy options as well to keep the kids cool.
Oh, lollipops and that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We call them icy poles, not ice lollies. For
Why?
Anyone listening that thinks that's interesting. But yeah, they're icy poles. But yeah, we had lots of fruit and always snacks that were made by the parents. It's quite wholesome.
Well, look, you're in the UK now, so you can have something that contributes to obesity.
All right, I'm going for the knockoff After Eight.
And Kat, you're not Jack.
No,
A significant upgrade. Jack's moving house and he's been busy, but we decided that a fresh face from Harvey Nash would come and join the show.
Exactly.
Yeah. Excited?
Yeah, excited.
Nervous?
No,
Good.
just excited.
What are you going to have?
I'm going to have this mint thing as well.
A mint thing. No one went for
really?
Turkish Delight or the mince pie, which was
It's
probably...
not, yeah.
Do eat as we go on. I'm going to risk shortbread. I don't know when I'm going to bite into this.
Julian might be finished by the end of this, by the way, just so you know.
Chocolate, yeah, the seashell-y type things.
Yeah.
Right.
The seashells, yeah.
Yeah, whatever they are. Before we get into into this first article, I will, of course, say to anyone watching and listening, hey, comment as we go, because that would be fun on any of the channels that they're watching. But first story, we're going to talk about Instagram. So, Lisa, the kind of spotlight's on you, but everyone else jump in. This is an article that I picked out from Vox. It's written by Rebecca Jennings. Instagram is broken, and it also broke us, is the headline. Really positive view on Instagram.
It was a long one. She was all over the place, actually, if you read it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I feel like, ultimately the article was about a real journey of Instagram, really. And I think quite early on, she talks about, if you look back at her own channel, she had different types of posts from one period of her life that was equally the worst summer and the best, autumn period. And based on the sort of creative aesthetic, you wouldn't be able to tell that on images alone. So where a picture does tell 1,000 words, apparently not enough to describe how she was feeling at the time. But she talks about kind of Instagram does a really good job of flattening lived experiences, which I thought was a nice way to describe, the channel. But this is probably my favorite debate in the world. It's just like philosophical debates about Instagram or tech or social media in general. But I think it was she chose an ultimately negative view. She talked about brand safety. She talked about, can anything really be authentic if the algorithm is preferencing people who have large follow accounts, and therefore, if you want to use the platform to build an audience, then you might be doing things that are popular and not necessarily authentic. Yeah. She also talks about the fact that influencers and celebrities who have built big audiences are now trying to show, challenges they've had with mental health, or kind of talk about the real experience that they're having behind the camera, which has also been brought about by things like stories, which gives you a more behind the scenes version to Instagram than your feed, etc. And I can't tell you how often I have this conversation and this debate, and I think there's a light and shade of Instagram that.
Zooming out from Instagram for a second, It's interesting that you talk about the fact that she references the good years and the bad years and they look indistinguishable, because we had a podcast recently on the show with Amber Costa from Balpro, and she talks about the fact that she's got this picture where she's ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange and she looks really, really happy, but she was actually going through a period of deep depression. And mental health is not something that you can necessarily see by the way that someone looks. And it, you know, relating it back to Instagram, it talks about a recent survey. 1,500 British young people showed that Instagram was considered the worst social media network for health and well-being, associated with higher levels of anxiety, depression and loneliness.
I mean, yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah?
Yeah, like, I think when I was younger, because it came out when I was in, I must have been year 9, maybe year 8.
Just to try and make me feel bad now.
Yeah. We weren't around. Me and you, we weren't even around. I don't even have an Instagram account. I don't even know.
But it's like straight away, you saw these people who had done really well on it and you just thought, oh, I want to be like that. And you try as hard as you can to just constantly push this perfect image.
But that's not Instagram's fault.
But isn't that also
exactly.
on Facebook? Because I've got like a few friends who completely live their life on Facebook. Like every single thing they do, you can't go to a meal with them without them taking a photo or putting it onto Facebook. And I can't tell the difference between Instagram, Facebook, and any others because I have none of those. The only social media platform I have is LinkedIn, only because I have to have it for work. But other than that, I post nothing of personal information or any of these things. But that's my point. If you know that those things will ultimately, you're going to be chasing the likes, you're going to get involved in, I don't know, political debates, then you're going to, whatever platform you're on, we know what it's about.
Well, isn't that the point? It doesn't matter about the platform. There's a line in this that's really interesting. It says the entire existence is predicated on reminding people that other people are having more fun than they are.
Yeah.
If you have a weekend with someone, if you come into the office after the weekend and you say, how was your weekend? No one turns around and goes, oh, it was awful.
Yeah.
We all want to try and present an image of ourselves that is positive.
Yeah.
And regardless of whether or not that's on Instagram, that's just human nature, right?
I mean, that's you before children. Once you have children, you come in on Monday morning. How's your weekend? Oh my God.
But your children are all wonderful.
I think the thing is that people need to remember is, I fortunately work in social media and I'm incredibly well educated on platforms, highs, lows. Yeah. I've heard every story, both negative and positive. I've heard identity theft and I've heard of, girls in school who have learning disabilities and really struggle to fit in, but all of a sudden have found these people who are incredibly artistic and talented in makeup, and they've found that their real belonging and sense of identity matched by people like them in communities that they're not necessarily have immediate access to. And so I genuinely do think for every negative there is a positive, and it is important for the negative stories to come out because it forces regulation and it creates a lot of improvements. Things like should we test, removing the likes and making sure that we're measuring things by the right metrics. But what Instagram were really trying to do was show that as a social media platform, they were a platform that was really compelling for brands and advertisers, and that people were having genuine conversations, and they were trying to essentially bring those kind of good stories to light for advertisers because it's a free platform that we all use and we all love. And you only need to look at some of the changes that they've made recently to see that it's not going to really change what we do, which is influencer marketing. People are still going to be able to see the likes. It's still a dynamic where you can understand the impact of what you're putting out there versus not. But I don't think that we need to get so caught up in like the lowest common denominator. I understand there's like importance for tech platforms to kind of think of everyone, but it's important for users to become educated on how they curate their own experience.
Out of interest, the likes thing is interesting because whilst people say, it's the death knell of influencers, and it mentions the same here, but existing influencers are actually broadly supportive of it. Does it risk slightly narrowing the pool of people who do have influence on the platform? I mean, are likes an interesting dynamic of getting fresh faces recognition or not?
I don't think anymore. I think it gives Instagram a bigger role in how you discover creators to work with, because now it's a first-party data source that no one else can access, because there were a million different companies built on scraping Instagram data publicly. So again, I think that's fantastic. It's going to centralize a little bit more of kind of the ecosystem, and I also think it's going to make what is publicly available, which is creativity. It's creativity and how images stand out, how especially if you talk about brands and advertising on Instagram, it's content that stops you, and ultimately it's the content that stops you that's going to be more engaging. I don't know anyone that has used Instagram and only liked something because there are other likes, or you know what I mean? Like you stop and you double tap, you stop and actually pause on a story when you're interested in reading it all. You know, it's that kind of content that is genuinely engaging is going to continue to be engaging. And I think what I find interesting is when you hear stats like this, no one's done the same survey for TikTok. You know, TikTok is essentially like a black box at the moment in terms of conversations and mental health and bullying and brand safety. And I think it's just a matter of time before we kind of maybe move on to what does authenticity look like now, when that's a platform that only rewards virality. You know, and it's rewarding specific types of behaviour that maybe aren't also authentic.
Let's move onto our next story. We will come back to, I don't know why I'm saying we may well come back to, we will come back to social media at the end of the show. But looking at time, I want to move on to this. This is a bit random, and it might be a bit more for you, Shahad, because a lot of people still don't really understand Bitcoin and blockchain more generally. But this is from the Next Web. It's an article where the headline is "Meet the artist building a crypto-inspired art museum on the blockchain." And my first reaction when I read that was, why?
Well, this is really weird because
I'm glad you think so.
I mean, I read the article and I was like, okay. Again, I was like, why? If you think about, if you look at the art from the Renaissance time, sorry to go a bit theoretical on this. If you look at all of Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, all of those things, anyone who studies Renaissance will see that there's always codes built in. The whole concept of the Da Vinci Code was that his art was full of code. This guy is kind of did something similar and put a code out there on an art, and there's bitcoins inside it. And there's so many of these Bitcoin hackathons. There's pictures, and within it, if you hack the Bitcoin, you get the millions of Bitcoins or whatever.
Just to jump in. So as the article gives some context to anyone watching, earlier this year, French crypto graffiti artist, who knew that was a thing, Pascal Boyart, painted a mural and hid $1,000 worth of Bitcoin in it. And then authorities grayscaled over it.
Grayscaled it because they don't agree with Bitcoin. Now all his
graffiti, maybe, I don't know.
Well, no, they actually do. They actually don't mind graffiti. They've actually got walls that say graffiti here, but people choose to graffiti the wall next to that.
Exactly.
No, so that's all it was. They're against Bitcoin, and because he said he did that, they agree. So he came up with this great idea. In Ethereum, there's this blockchain-based Minecraft thing, and he thought, right, I'm going to build a museum in there. So it's already happening. People build stuff in Minecraft. My 6-year-old nephew builds stuff in Minecraft. Yeah. So all this guy's done is gone onto Ethereum and built a museum and just put art there. So it's nothing super duper. Anyone could. I mean, it's no different to my 6-year-old cousin, my nephew building an art in Minecraft.
But there is some element here, right? That it's about censorship. This piece of artwork in the real world was grayscaled over. Within the platform, you are able to buy land.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you're able to buy what they consider land is virtual blocks.
Right, not actual land, but yes.
Yeah,
you can buy space within this virtual world.
Yeah.
And then they're talking about running it. You know, maybe someday someone will be willing to subsidise my museum, just like art foundations in the real world, or maybe propose partnership to display their business info in my lands because of traffic. So this is really quite. It is quite kind of like whatever, but at the same time, it's massively disruptive.
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, people will start living, I think, more and more in the digital world. Already, I know people that don't have friends real life, but have friends on Facebook and Instagram halfway around the world, and they consider those people as friends. I find that weird, personally. Like, I've got the same friends that I met when I was 6 years old. So to me, that's the relationship I've had. My best man at my wedding was a guy I met at when we were both 6. So 35 years. But there are people who've never met their friends and have been friends. So the digital world is coming more and more that way. So it's not completely out of the norm for them to have a digital space and people to sponsor digital space. Just like now, when you wanted to sell digital ad on a website, everyone thought, what a stupid idea, I'm going to put ads on a billboard. Yeah. But now web space is prime location for ad.
The world's most expensive homepage. The guy just sold like a pixel.
Pixel,
each,
yeah. For £1 each.
I just feel like, you know, becoming a gamer or doing that sort of part-time as a hobby is actually quite a skill to develop now. So that you can understand distinctions between like how to build community relationships in a virtual world versus this one as well, because they are just becoming closer and closer.
Does it make them an influencer? If they own a load of virtual land on a platform that everyone's accessing, it might not be Instagram, but it's
Second Life.
It's better for me.
Yeah. Would you buy anything in the virtual world? Piece of art?
I mean, I don't know, because when I think about art, you want it like on your wall, don't you? So, but it's going to be
It's all kind of investment based, isn't it? It's not about these other things like enjoying
that's
food
the thing.
or enjoying...
It's kind of the
People
same.
used to say that about books. They said, I want it on my bookshelf. But now they don't want it on the bookshelf.
No,
they want it on the
honestly.
Amazon Kindle.
No.
But still as a utility, you can read it.
Yeah, I mean, they still have their bookshelves nicely pictured. People who wanted CDs on their shelf to have the CD cover and all of that. Now they've got it on their phone, and they've got the album cover there. So
although there is a backlash back towards, you know, people having record collections at home, and you know.
But
do I walk around in Ethereum and enjoy the museum in the same way I would in the real world?
Well, it's through the phone though. That's the thing. It's through the phone. They will just walk through. I mean, to me, I think museums should be, you know, enjoyed from the outside. You know, I'm not a museum lover, so I wouldn't like it in the digital world or the real world. Personally, I lived in Madrid next to Thyssen. I never went in there and had Picasso in there. And my point was, fair enough, but I can see that there are people who will go into that, and they do live their world on. I've got friends who live on Facebook, and that's it. That's all the information they get about everything is on Facebook. So
I can see why it would be like popular.
To a certain group,
I just like to see things in real life. So I think it's just attracting different groups of people, isn't it?
What about children's generation?
Yeah.
On after that, the worlds are being blurred now.
I know. Yeah.
I don't want to be a Luddite.
It is. No, it's 100%. You're 100% there. There is a massive world being blurred between the digital world and the real world, and the lines are basically. I mean, the whole idea of Bitcoin was we didn't need we didn't need physical currencies. We need digital currencies because currently every pound digital currency is linked to the physical pound. Essentially a physical currency, but Bitcoin is completely digital. So we are slowly moving more and more into the digital world.
Which is a great segue for the next article, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. You're reading my mind. Or are you just done with this piece? Let's move on.
Digital museum, whatever.
A social debate about, you know, who's constructing kind of these worlds, and what does that mean for current generations, current workers, etc.
So yes, it is on my screen in front of me. Thank you, Lisa. Reinventing the relationship between workers and tech. This is in TechCrunch. Really interesting one. It kind of starts off with this kind of narrative about a young father and kitchen worker in Pittsburgh thrilled to get a job with a big restaurant chain that paid $15 an hour, much more than he'd been making previously. However, then found his schedule was set through an algorithm that crunches data and found that it would be working all sorts of random hours, fewer hours. And I suppose this is a bigger debate about the gig economy, if we're thinking about the protests, about Lyft, about Uber, and the way that tech is being used to constantly drive efficiencies in workforces, and basically who has a seat at the table, right?
Yes, but the issue with tech is that, you guys spoke about this in the last talk shop, which is bias in, bias out. And when you've got, not all minorities represented in who are creating these ecosystems or coding or building, then it can have some real issues. And this was about have workers' voices at the table, so when we have regulatory conversations, they're brought into the conversation as well, not just kind of big business or government, but actually employees as well.
Like Works Council, like they have in like the German car manufacturers, the Works Council, like in Volkswagen, is
fine,
as powerful as any other board member.
But I'd say the issue with the sort of technological kind of innovation curve is it's steep and it's vertical and it's right in front of us. And I don't think that, most people really struggle to kind of get their heads around implications. And people, when you kind of bring that voice into the table, it's really important. But it also, how can it just brings in another sort of bias, which is how can workers really understand? They obviously feel threatened coming from a defensive place. Just like coal miners aren't going to be for green energy, because it means their job, for example, is on the line. And I think it's a really important conversation to have. But of course, it just needs to be managed with, for me, education on how do we upskill? How do we, pivot? employees who have, real lives, real benefits required, and etc., into new things, and how do we move education at the same speed as technological advancement if we can?
The other side of that, though, is if you think about as a tech company, like say I'm a driver, I haven't managed to get my knowledge, or I haven't managed to get a job with a traditional cabbie firm. I could apply for Uber, and there's nothing stopping me from just simply applying for Uber. It's like we're about to launch Openbrix, and one of the things we're getting is requests from Spain and Germany, and people are saying, "Can we use your platform?" We're like, well, we can't stop you. You can't stop you from physically typing www.openbrix.co.uk, because you can do that. We can't stop you from doing that work, and we can't stop you from signing up and uploading your properties and stuff like that. So in a way, the workers also have to take responsibility as a community to be like, because once upon a time, like if there was a strike, no one would cross picket lines and stuff. But apparently that was what used to happen before my time. But apparently nowadays, like if there is a strike, you've got loads of people that will happily work. So you've got to have that kind of community within the workers to say, we're not going to just do gig economy work and create kind of a new social contract, essentially.
I suppose the interesting point here is who should be taking the lead, because tech is neither inherently good nor bad, and those algorithms can be used in both ways, right?
Yes.
So should it be government? Should it be big tech themselves or technology businesses, or should it be the workers? Whose responsibility? I'd imagine that we'd say government, but government's often ineffective at coming up with policy.
So where does the regulate Openbrix if there's some Spanish guys that wants to set up here? The UK government will be like, well, we can't regulate the Spanish labour market, and the Spanish market will say, well, Openbrix is based in London. That's the thing with tech.
So what, because tech is borderless?
Yeah, we can turn around if we wanted to, just say to the Spanish guys, yeah, sure, jump in and run your gig economy. There's nothing the Spanish government can do, because we're based in the UK, and the UK government will be like, well, these are Spanish workers. So that grey area is where tech essentially thrives.
I mean, the article talks about the fact that the Californian Governor Gavin Newsom has recently launched a commission on the future of work. The president of the Service Employees International Union co-chairs the commission. So that there is stuff there happening, I suppose, at a local. It's difficult to kind of think about the federal structure in the states as local government. It's not exactly Hounslow Council, but
state government.
Yeah, you get my point. However, it does also talk about in the article that one of the most interesting areas of partnership is MIT, which is prolific in developing innovative technologies, often in partnerships with industry, and exploring and inviting groups of workers to advise their labs. And I suppose that's quite interesting, that academic piece going, you know what, we're maybe a little bit separate, and maybe we've got an opportunity to bring these different groups together in a way that's not...
Theory versus practical as well, so many criticisms of academia as well, because it's far too theoretical to be practical at all.
I think academia always talks about, I remember getting involved in someone about use cases of blockchain. I said, well, you don't have to ask people what the use case is. I'll wait till they're using it. That's the use case.
Exactly.
Whereas academia is always about, let's get in a book, let's crunch some numbers, we do need think tanks. I'm not denying the think tanks, but we also need do tanks. And I think yes, government needs to. I think tech, when they get bigger, they have a great way of playing governments because they work in that grey. And I sincerely think that tech companies shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
My personal opinion. My opinion is, hang on a minute, if you're using, because those workers, my tax money paid for schooling and training and health and all that, and you're just using that, and you're not paying me any of that tax back. So I feel I should, as a taxpayer, I should get something back from the tech companies using the labour force that I kind of created, essentially, as taxpayers. But at the same time, tech companies, if they can play the system, they will. And I just think there does need to be work between the government, tech, and I think mainly a research institute that actually turns around and says, look, I do think there is some think tank to say, look, these are the best ways. Because if you don't have the three together, it's going to be very hard.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think someone can take the lead. I think it has to be a collaborative agreement, just like Facebook going, we just look at user data to tell us what's important and what's not. And governments are coming in saying, yeah, but you guys are biased towards advertisers with their own agendas, and it's just layered. So I think, I just don't think it's one or the other.
No, there can't be a leader, collaboration.
Let's move on to the last story. We've got a few minutes left, so very quickly, we're coming back to social media. This is something taken from The Guardian. Got to have something from The Guardian in there, right?
Election season and all.
Not showing my colours too much. But there we go. Twitter to clear out inactive accounts and free up usernames. On the surface, this is very boring. Twitter are deleting dormant accounts from the 11th of December. If you haven't been active on Twitter in 6 months, they are deleting your account. They're freeing up lots of handles. Hopefully, our social following won't drop by several thousand users where we realise that everyone who follows us actually isn't on there anymore. No, the interesting piece here is that it's met some opposition. I just want to read out this quick paragraph. It seems very short-sighted and not particularly considered, said Elaine O'Neill, whose partner died in 2013. As well as erasing history and furthering the idea that all of our work in the internet age is increasingly temporal, it's going to mean the loss of the accounts of friends, family members, partners who we loved and lost. Okay. I don't want to sound churlish here, and obviously Elaine O'Neill has a very considered point. Fine. Do we really want to remember our loved ones through social media?
I mean, personally, I wouldn't want to be remembered through my Twitter account.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your Twitter account is just retweeting stupid stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. Things I think is hilarious, which really aren't. And if someone wanted to remember me through that, they probably wouldn't really remember me at all. So.
I mean, if we're getting back to that initial conversation we had at the beginning, like what we present on social media, especially on Instagram, is not reality.
Yeah.
Well, it is. It's all a reflection of reality.
I know a lot. I agree 100%, Lisa. Like, I've got people that actually live. That is them. Now, that's if I wanted to know what's going on with a certain one of my friends from a certain group. If I go to their Facebook page, I will know every single thing about them. And if I wanted to remember them, I would know. I would just review their life that year, and I'll know everything that happened. They have more information than photos.
It's
so
pretty
in a way,
lazy to just look at someone's Instagram and go, that's them, no need to ask a question. You know, like, you obviously can dig deeper. It's like, okay, we all understand that, you know, we all have different public and private consumption. Your browser history is going to be very different to what you put on Instagram, and that's always been the case. We do things in public spheres, we do things in private spheres. It's been like that since day dot. There's nothing new. My fun fact is that I actually wrote my dissertation in university about death and the internet, which is about this topic. And should people live on from a cyber sense or not? And I would say as the worlds are getting closer and closer together, I can't believe that's going to be something very easy to police. You know, I think we all will persist in some sort of cyber form. I think it was short-sighted for Twitter because they were very quick about it and probably didn't think of this implication. Yeah. But I think as loved ones, you could very easily, if you care about that Twitter account or that Facebook account, you can ask for it to be memorialised like they've done with Facebook.
Yes, it does.
You could also, as
Twitter
a user,
doesn't have
say,
that service at the moment.
I never want my account to be memorialised. It needs to be a choice. But there were instances where, you know, I remember when I was studying it, fathers would kind of send, schedule an email for their daughter's 18th birthday, you know, just in case they weren't there, and a message from the grave, and like whether or not that is an okay thing or not is not for us to say. But
I suppose
it's a good thing Twitter's done it.
If we ignore the T's and C's that probably cover this, but simply from an ethical point of view, if you've got a platform that basically is encouraging you to upload huge portions of your life, do they then have the right to simply delete it?
No, probably not. And that's why I think we just need to have some foresight and go, listen, should you pass? Just like in a will, this is an asset for you. This is something that, obviously Twitter owns, but I think we can share some sort of liability.
This is the key thing, and this has been my bugbear, and this is why I'm supportive of blockchain so much. If I want to access any government services, I have my passport issued by government, who I'm a shareholder of, my driving license, my NHS card. So I have, for physical world, I have my ID, my pass issued by my government. But in the digital world, if you wanted to access any of your accounts, you say you use your personal account, but actually use one of Google, Facebook, or whatever. So so your digital world is controlled completely by a corporate organization, right? Multiple. So your digital world, your digital identity is controlled by these organizations. So if government doesn't want to get involved and help police or help, provided, why isn't government in this day and age providing me a digital ID that I can log on? Why do I have to log on with my Google or log on with my Facebook? Yeah. Why isn't a government ID that I can use? It gives me that on passports. And by the way, passports is actually quite new. Private companies used to issue ID before government took it over. So it's the same principle. So why isn't government doing that? And if they're not going to get involved in that, then don't push us into this centralized world. There are decentralized social media sites such as Steemit and stuff like that, which means that I control the information that I'm in, and no one can delete that. That's a ledger that I own forever. As long as I have my key, I have access to it.
I suppose we share so much more now about ourselves digitally that is it fair to assume that the government would be able to do that? I mean,
why can't they issue a digital passport? They do a physical passport. My access to hundreds of services is used by my ID. Why can't they issue a digital ID, and then when I log in, I just say log in with UK government ID instead of log in with Google?
Would you trust the government with your digital passport?
More than your corporations is the question.
Oh, that's okay, fine.
Yeah, so yeah.
I mean,
Whereas
this is just a total political.
Google or Parliament.
I trust whoever can actually function.
Yeah.
That would be
So
my
neither of
answer.
them. No.
But they control it, and government has pushed us into that control,
Yeah.
control. So it's either they're not going to get involved in it, or they at least support blockchain so we can decentralize it, so we're not controlled by centralized. And that's my view.
We're out of time. We haven't eaten anything, so we'll go off air and we'll eat stuff.
Stuff our faces on.
You all get T-shirts.
Yes.
Lovely
Yes.
T-shirts. Yeah, I remembered.
Proud.
The cheer from the audience is a significant moment because I always forget about this. But we'll make sure that you each get a T-shirt.
Thank you.
Please do subscribe to the channel. Follow us. Subscribe on YouTube. I think 16 people have already, so it's a growing channel.
Amazing.
But no, there are significant followings.
Cancelled out.
There are significant followings on other channels. So please subscribe and follow. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and we will be back in the new year.